Going over some more Shaw Brothers. There's like hundreds of more Shaw Brothers films I can go into. There's one I really, really liked I saw years ago on the Kung Fu channel. I remember that when they used to have good cable channels. The Assassin with Jimmy Wang Yu, one of the rare kung fu films taking place during the Bronze Age. He has a metal sword. He has an iron sword, and his enemies have bronze swords that don't hold up to it. It was a really cool film. It had a really good line in it, but I don't know if I could find the dub version. Anyway, okay, now this they call it Return of the Deadly Venoms. This is Crippled Avengers. Okay, now this is dealing with what they call the five Venom mobs. Okay, the Deadly Venom, Five Deadly Venoms is a film. I don't have a copy of it, believe it or not, which started the whole thing these guys. Okay, these guys were Peking opera trained. Okay, a lot of the Peking opera schools. Jackie Chan was from one of them. Sammo Hung was from one of them. A lot of them were not doing well financially. These kids were basically sold to these places to be tortured and trained to become athletes. To become opera performers, the Chinese opera. And then the opera was pretty much done. And so they started to get jobs as kung fu stuntmen in the early 70s. And then they started to do choreography. And this is where the movies become straight up like superhero films. And you always had this kind of superhero kind of thing in some of the films, like the 18 Bronzemen and other stuff. You have the wire food, right? You have people on cables. You have less realistic stuff. But the difference was this was maybe less realistic, but the acrobatics and the movements were almost like inhuman. Okay. Now these dudes, the biggest one of these guys was like 5'6". Okay. Most of them were like 5'3", 5'4" guys. Philip Cole, right? Ko Chu, the most famous guy. He's the dude that choreographed Hard Boiled, and he was the badass assassin dude or not. If you've seen that, but the Deadly Venom films introduced these guys, and this film is even better than the friggin' Deadly Venoms. The Crippled Avengers. Now, what's this about? And this is as you see the top now. This is the Ming Dynasty. This is now like the 1500s, the 1400s, right? 1300s. This is after the Yun Dynasty, which was the Mongols. Kublai Khan had taken over, right? So this is a Chinese dynasty, right? As they say. And this guy here, he used to be a hero. And then these villains come and they chop off his son's arms. This is like the first 3 minutes of the film. And so he goes, don't worry, I'll make you Iron Hands, right? So he makes his son Iron Hands, but instead of this guy becomes evil. He becomes like an insane madman, and his son becomes a cold-blooded killer. Uh, Amongst other things, he also becomes a cold-blooded crippler. So these regular working class dudes, one guy's a hawker, one guy's a blacksmith, one guy's actually a noble dude. They run across these dudes for like slight reasons, and he has them crippled. He has one guy's blinded by the sun's metal hands. The other guy is made deaf and dumb. The other dude has his head crushed so that he becomes like an imbecile, like a child-minded person. And the other guy, they cut his legs off. Oh man, it's like whoa. And so the guy who was made childlike, he actually was a fighter. And they find a thing on him because now he's like a kid. He's like a big kid. I mean, he's a very funny, performance. Although he could still fight, right? And they find where he's from, and they go back, and his teacher's like, "Oh, this is horrible." He goes, "But you know what? I'm gonna teach you crippled men. I'm gonna make you learn kung fu." Right, and then they learn kung fu, and they get around. I mean, you could say it's an endearing message, but the final message is to get revenge, right? And these guys train. The guy with no legs gets metal legs, and he learns how to kick with them. The blind guy, he trains his hearing really good, and the deaf guy, he actually has a mirror. He has mirrors on his wristband, and on his he has a necklace where you can see behind him. And they go and they get revenge. And man, the final fight in this is absolutely insane. If you showed this film, and there's another film here too. If you showed this film to someone that doesn't like kung fu movies, 90% of them are gonna like this film. I guarantee it because I seen it happen. So, okay. Legendary Weapons of China. This is another Lau Kar Young film. Um, Somewhat comedic, but in between comedic and serious. Once again, this deals with the Boxer Rebellion. The film opens up where these guys are being trained to resist firearms, right? And so the guys come out, and Gordon Liu, who's usually a hero, he plays, I wouldn't say a villain, but he's a very zealot monk. He's training these guys to be bulletproof. Problem is that whenever they test it, it never works. The guys die. So they decide to find the guy. There's a guy who has perfected the art of being immune to bullets, but he escaped. He basically left a society of these people, and he left. And so the whole film is 3 different people tracking him down. And when they find him, which is him, Lar Ko Young, rest in peace. When they find him, they find the truth. They say, teach us your kung fu so we can fight the foreign devils. And the guy's like, he goes, there is no way to be immune to bullets. I wasn't gonna send my students out to be butchered. It's impossible. So that's kind of it was an interesting facet of the film. And then of course, there's betrayal, but there's also the choreography. Like I said, the choreography, from La Yang, that's how you pronounce that, I think. The choreography in this is sick. It's amazing. They're like these agents. They're like ninjas, but there's just so many crazy fights in this, and weapons and just everything. Especially at the end when they fight with the 18 weapons. Like this is another name for this is 18 Weapons of China. Really cool, really cool. And of course, what's her name? Kara Hu Wei is beautiful. The beautiful woman was in this. I always liked her, and she's also a great fighter and actor fighter, not a real fighter, but she does some amazing films. She's really good too. There's a movie called My Young Auntie, which I don't have, which I've seen, which is more of another comedic film where she's really good in that too, where she plays a traditional mainlander woman who now becomes the auntie of this family because she married an older guy who died. And so and these people live in Hong Kong, so they're kind of like new, they're like new Chinese. She doesn't, it's interesting seeing how they clash, but I don't have that film. If you see any of these films on YouTube and they're up, and watch them. All right. This film about the kid with the golden arm. I remember Halloween, 1981, Saturday, before I went trick-or-treating, I watched this. Another Venom film. These are the Venom dudes. Holy jeez. Right, it starts out with the awesome Shaw Brothers intros they would have with the colored a background of just like one flat color, and then you see these dudes doing the techniques, and they would be announced. The number one was Golden Arm, and his Golden Arm. This dude, his arms are invulnerable. He could fight. He doesn't need weapons. He could break swords and everything with his hands. Right? Then you get Silver Spear number 2. Number 3, Iron Robe, right? Number 4, Brass Head. And you also get more betrayal in this. And great lines, too. Like the one guy, I remember the chick, she gets, the woman in this, she gets ambushed and tricked by Iron Robe. And she's like, oh, you're despicable. And he's like, he says flat out, he's like, what do you expect from a criminal? All I want to do is win. And also the other scene where the chivalrous jerk off in this, who's brave, but he doesn't like this drunken guy who's actually a secret agent. He's basically like, was I ever scared to die once? And the woman's like, oh no, you were never scared ever. The brave hero. And he goes, here's this look on his face. He goes, dishonor. That scares me. And I just remember these lines as a kid because they're just like heavy stuff, man. Of course, at the end, then you have Iron Feet. Holy crap, who is that? Well, another Venom film. Now, the Destroyers. That's how I remember this. But it's also, I think in England, it's called Magnificent Ruffians. Right? This film, holy jeez, man. This is one of those films where I say like there's humor and then tragedy and then mayhem in this film. You have the the villain, this guy's usually the villain, Liu Fang. He's badass with the freaking halberd weapon, right? He's a son of a great hero, but he's also a decadent merchant. He likes to pretend to have matches with other young kung fu artists, and then he kills them. And so he runs into these former escorts, guys that used to escort all of the, used to have caravans that would go from China all the way to the Middle East. They would need to be protected, at least part of the way, from bandits. And so these are the last generation of these dudes, and now guns and ships have made their job kind of useless. So what these guys do, they do something very funny. Since they have no money, okay, they'll go to a restaurant. They'll find a restaurant. There's three of them. They'll find a restaurant, and they'll go, "Hey, this looks good," and they'll eat as much as they can. And then the two of them will leave, and one will stay, and he'll sit on the chair, and the guy will say, "Okay, well, you have to pay the bill," and the guy's like, "I don't have any money," and he'll then take a beating from the kitchen staff. And because they're kung fu guys, they usually don't get hurt too bad, and so they walk out. So it's kind of funny how they do that. Eventually, they do that to the wrong place though, and then another guy comes who offers to pay the bill, and then it turns out he doesn't have any money either. But instead of letting himself get beat by the kitchen staff, he decides to whoop their ass and leave. And the friendship of these guys coming together is contrasted to when they run into this dude and what he does, the underhanded thing he does to get rid of his rival here. It turns a comedy film into a damn tragedy, and then revenge is coming, and it's hard won. None of these films anything ever comes easy. I gotta wrap this up. Roar the Lion, Lion vs. Lion. Another example of a movie that's funny. It's funny, and then it becomes very, very dark and vicious at the end. Okay, this has a line that I always thought was really cool, which now I know is a proverb. The villain in this, he's a Manchu agent, but he's also a kung fu school teacher. And these two guys, this is a con man guy. And this guy who's like a kind of a justice lunkhead dude. They team up and they start beating up the other schools to get the students. And so these guys who get beat up, they go to this villain to get revenge, and they go, "We want justice." And the guy looks at him and he goes, "Justice? There is no justice. Winner is king, loser the thief." And I remember as a kid, like, wow, that's heavy, and it is heavy. The literal translation I've heard from John Derbyshire, if you know who he is, is if you won, you were the emperor. If you lost, you were the bandit. That has proven to be probably the most enduring statement I've ever heard in my life, that is constantly being reinforced by everything I see around me as I get older. Okay, the ancient Chinese wisdom is actually rather practical and seen in other cultures as well, just said differently. The end of this was like, holy crap. And one thing too, this beautiful, what's the name? This beautiful woman here. You have a lot of fighting females in these films. They kick ass, but frequently they get their asses kicked and they're killed. I remember as a kid being freaked out by these movies. They kill children too in these films, but a lot of times they'll kill the beautiful female, fighter. She'll get killed, and I remember as a kid being really freaked out by that and upset by that. There's no mercy there's any equality in this, and that everybody gets friggin' slaughtered. But this was a great film, and there's a cool lion dance. North versus South lion dancing skill is done. Lion dancing. Why not? Yeah, remember that. All right, gotta finish it up. This film, man, is like one of those films that set the template for a lot of other movies. 5 Shaolin Masters. Okay, the Shaolin Temple gets burned down. There's Fu Sheng. These 5 guys escape. And there's 5 bad dudes that pursue them. They barely escape the first time. They all get their asses kicked by this Manchu expert. And they lose. In the middle of the film, they all lost to a one-on-one fight with these dudes. And so they decide that they're going to escape, go into the countryside, and they're just gonna train for a year, and then they're gonna come back, challenge these dudes, and it's just gonna be, what it's gonna be. And they get their revenge, but not all of them survive. Great film, great film. And real quick, Hammer, Shaw Brothers, enough said. Great film, man. All right, later.